Welcome in. I hope you're having an amazing day today. Um, so I'm going to be sharing today on leading with balance, how you can really start to unlock success and well-being in your career as a nonprofit leader. Before I dive into what we're going to be sharing, what I'm going to be sharing about today, I want to give you mm, a little update on our plans for today. So I have I have a whole slide deck that I was planning on sharing and going through with you all today, and I'll probably still use it to some degree. However, a couple hours ago, I really started feeling like I needed to share more of my story, my journey to creating more balance and especially as a leader. Now, I'm still going to cover the same content that I was planning on covering. However, I'm just going to the format in which that I share that with you today is going to be a little different. So just I'm going to go ahead and let me pop this up real quick. Actually, let's do this. All right. Um, I'll share just a little bit about me, just kind of my background before we get into more of my story. My degree is in social work. I have spent the majority of my career in operations management. So almost 30 years in administration and operations management, really focused on systems, processes, increasing efficiencies, just kind of the general overall operations of organizations. I've been featured in multiple magazines. I've been interviewed on podcasts, and I've been quoted and featured in articles in both physical and digital magazines. So I do have the street creds as well. But I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of kind of that, because that's who I am. And sometimes it's important for you to know a little bit about the qualifications of the person who is teaching you any type of information. I have a love for all things productivity. I got really interested in productivity when I was a college student. Good morning. Yeah, definitely say hello if you're coming in the room. Feel free to say hello. Let me know that you are here. Drop where you're tuning in from, and along the way, feel free to drop any questions that you may have. Feel free to drop those in the chat as we go along. But anyway, so that's really my professional background. I'm also the author of a couple of books. I've written chapters in two different anthologies. So I've been at this productivity thing for 3 decades now. Um, but I'm also a mom. I'm a mom. My daughter is 31 years old, and she's getting married next February. And I'm really excited. I really love the young man that she has chosen to do life with, and so that's a wonderful thing. But let's go ahead and dive into. I want to share with you kind of an overview of what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about some common challenges that we face as leaders as it relates to creating uh, life balance, right? Being successful in our career, being successful in our business, while also having success in our personal lives and not compromising between the two. So we'll talk about some of the common challenges, some strategies that you can use to be effective in your leadership while maintaining that balance. We'll also talk about building a support system, and I'll share with you a couple success stories, mine included. So I'm curious, before we dive in, let me know, what is your biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you have in balancing the demands of your work life or your career, your business, and your personal life? I'm really curious before we get started. Um, Personally, for me, when I first started on this journey, I struggled with this pressure to perform, right? I felt this pressure in the organization that I was working for to get things done, right? I was the office manager and we had billing required. I was responsible for our billing and we had these billing requirements. I was also responsible for making sure that our clinicians were appropriately scheduled to see our patients. So all of the operations things, I managed our budget, all the things, right? And we had certain benchmarks, certain KPIs, key performance indicators that we had to meet. And many of those were my responsibility. And so I had this pressure on me to actually be able to get all those things done and meet those KPIs. Because if I did not meet my KPIs for the month, then I had to come up with a plan of action on how I was going to get back to the level of performance that they were expecting my agency to be at. So that meant not only would I be kind of behind from a KPI standpoint, but then I had to do extra work to create this plan and submit it for approval every single week until I came back to the level that I was supposed to be at. So that meant that I was working 55 plus hours a week, y'all. I was in the office 7:30 in the morning till 6, 7, 8, sometimes even 9 o'clock at night. Not only that, when our nurses would be on call, whoever was the call nurse that took any intakes or things of that nature or emergency calls, because I lived 5 minutes from the office, they would call me and be like, hey, can you go over to the office and grab this supply for so and so or whatever the case may be? So I was getting up sometimes, not usually not beyond midnight, but there was a time when it was after 11 o'clock and I got a call to go to the office to get some supplies for one of the nurses. So not only that, I was in the office on the weekends. Sundays, I never went in on Sundays, but Saturdays I was in the office at least 2 hours. Sometimes I might be there all day if I knew that I was going to be off a day or two the following week. So I would go into the office on Saturday to prepare for me being out. And then after whatever day I was off, I would then be in the office almost all day to recover from me being off. So it really wasn't like I was ever off. I just was making up those hours on the weekend. And as a result, I didn't have any balance between my professional life and my personal life. There was zero balance there. There was absolutely zero balance there. My health suffered. I had digestive issues. I was diagnosed with gastritis, so I had heartburn and GERD. I had if I got sick, I would be down for like a week. It was just a given. If I got any type of illness, I was going to be down. And I remember this one time that I got bronchitis really bad, like super high fever. And I was already scheduled to be on vacation the following week. However, I got sick. I didn't plan to get sick, but I got really, really sick. And, high fever, all the things, coughing. But I had one of my employees was scheduled to be off on it was a Friday, and I went into the office still sick because I'm going to take this off the screen. I went into the office still sick because I had made that promise to her that she could be off. And as a result, like while I'm in there, shouldn't have been in the office. I was still really, really sick. And I remember my supervisor, my director at the time, making this comment to me about work-related stuff. I don't remember what she said now because it's been way too long. Right? It's been way too long. But I don't remember exactly what she said, but whatever it was that she said, I remember thinking to myself, dude, I am in here nearly on my deathbed because I'm trying to make sure that things get done, and you don't even appreciate the fact that I showed up when I really should have been in bed taking care of myself. And that scenario completely shifted my perspective on how I show up in the workplace. Now, I don't know if maybe that's you. Maybe you've had a situation where you've been at work and you're putting in all these hours, you're giving all this extra time, energy, and effort to the mission and vision of the company that you work for, only to find out or only to feel like, hey, they don't even appreciate the fact that I'm sacrificing me to carry out the responsibilities that have been given to me for in the role that I have in the organization. If you've ever felt that way, let me know in the chat. Drop yes in the chat if you've ever felt that way. And so, me working all those hours, I was sacrificing my relationships because I didn't have much time to spend with my daughter. I didn't have much time to spend with my husband. I was even disconnected from myself, disconnected from self. I was disconnected from my dreams. And I made a decision that things were going to have to be different. I knew that I wanted more. I knew that more was available. I just wasn't sure at the time how to go after it. And ultimately, I decided to make a major change. And the changes that I decided to make are the things that shifted the trajectory, shifted the way that I show up as a leader, in how I showed up as a leader in the traditional corporate, like 9 to 5, and how I show up now in my business. And I want to share with you what those things are. So, well, before I do that, I just let me pop this up on the screen. So these are some of the common challenges that people face, right? So I had no boundaries. I felt guilty. I felt this pressure to perform, right? And I didn't mention this, but I didn't feel like I had enough staff to support the needs of the organization, to support what I needed to accomplish as the office manager, right? So those are some of the things. So those are some of the things that I experienced. But let's talk about, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to stick to what I said. I want to stick to my new plan. So the first thing that I did was I changed my environment. Now, I'm going to put a little caveat here. I'm not necessarily saying to you that you need to quit your job. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm not, so don't be like, Tristetta told me to go quit my job so that I can prioritize myself and do the thing. No, that's not what Tristetta is saying. What Tristetta is saying is that for me, the change in my environment meant that I had to remove myself from the place that I was working. Now, changing your environment may look like setting some boundaries where you are. It may look like adjusting your work schedule. It may look like incorporating more self-care. There could be changing your environment could look really differently. We are as unique as snowflakes. And so what works for me, what that looks like for me may look completely different for you, right? So I'm not necessarily saying, not necessarily saying change your job or your career, but I am saying survey the land and figure out what changes do I need in order to support me having more balance in my life. And for some of you, that may be that where you currently are employed, the business that you have currently built, maybe it needs a complete overhaul, or maybe you do need to leave the organization or company that you're working for. And that's okay, right? That's okay. So the first thing I did was I changed my environment. I made a decision that in order for me to pursue the life that I wanted, it was not going to be possible where I was working. The demands of the job that I had were too great for the type of life and changes that I wanted to make for myself. And so I had to make the decision to leave, right? So changed environment. The next thing that I did was I made some priorities. I started utilizing strategic prioritization. And let me just drop it. Let me put this up on the screen real quick. So there's three major I didn't include the environment on slide because I didn't know that I was going to talk about this. But these are the three, besides the environment, these are the three things that I really focused on: strategic prioritization, setting boundaries, and practicing self-care. So let's talk about prioritization. When it comes to prioritization, there's a few key components to doing that in prioritizing in a very strategic way. The first thing is goal alignment, right? So you got to make sure that that's just simply making sure that everyone is working toward the same goal. So that may be in the professional environment, and that may even be in your personal environment. So whether everyone might just be you, right? Everyone might just be you. But if you're talking about a team or organization, you've got to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Then you need to do an assessment, an impact assessment, to see how much of a difference doing particular things may make in creating more balance or getting things done, being more productive. Resource allocation. That's essentially deciding how to use your time, your money, and your human resources, right? So the people who are in your on your team, the people who are in your life, your support system, how are you going to position them? Then there's also risk management, which is essentially planning for things that can go wrong, right? That's all risk management is. Thinking about what could get in the way and coming up with a plan for how you're going to deal with that. How are you going to strategize around that? And then time sensitivity is just really understanding what things need to be done first. What are the priorities? We need to do first things first. So when it comes to prioritizing, what I did was I sat down and made a decision about what was most important to me. Like I kind of visualized the life that I wanted, the type of career that I wanted. And then I compared, right? So I did an assessment, right? And I compared where am I right now versus this vision that I have over here. And I compared them and said, what's the difference between this one and this one? And figured out what are the changes that I need to make in order to create my life to look more like this, right? To look more like that vision that I had, right? So it's figuring out what are the changes that need to make. And then I had to prioritize them because there was quite a few changes that I needed to make in order to create that more balance. One of the things that I really encourage my clients to do is to take things, one, you got to prioritize, but two, then once you figure that out, break things down into smaller bite-sized pieces. Where people make mistakes is they try to do a complete overhaul overnight. I don't know if you all remember the show. It was a home renovation show. The designer, I think his name was Ty, if I remember correctly. And it was like complete home makeover or something like that. And they would come in and completely redo people's homes. And they'd be like, bus driver, move that bus. Right. And they would come in a very short period of time and completely renovate someone's home. But they had a ton of help to make that happen. And it was off, it was a huge undertaking. Well, when it's just you and you're wanting to do a complete overhaul of your life because you're so out of balance, trying to do everything all at once can be overwhelming, especially if you don't have the support system, if you don't have the resources to bring in for you to be able to accomplish all that you desire to accomplish. So, one bite at a time. That's where that prioritization comes in. You've made a decision on what is most important, and then how can I make the adjustments to spend more time focusing on whatever that one thing that you decided as is as your decided on as your priority, right? Is this making sense? Um, do I want to go over this? Yeah, I'll do this real quick. So really quickly, I want to share with you the tool that I use, the Eisenhower Matrix. I don't know if you are familiar. So the Eisenhower matrix is made up of four different quadrants, right? Uh, on one side, you have the one axis, you have the important and not important. And then on the other axis, you have the urgent and not urgent, right? So it breaks this down into four different quadrants. The Each of the quadrants stands for something. So if an item is or a task is urgent and important, okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. The chandelier room. So urgent and important, that means you do it. Just go ahead and do it right then. It's important and it's urgent. You need to do it right away. If it's not urgent, but it is important, then you need to make a decision, right? You need to make a decision on when you're going to do it. So decide, right? Put it on your schedule. Make a decision about when you're going to create space, when you're going to create time to actually get that task done. If it is urgent but it's not important, then that's a candidate for delegation. And that may look like actually delegating it to a team member or to a colleague, to a direct report. It may look like delegating that to a family member if it's something in your personal life, a family member or a friend. It may look like outsourcing, right? Hiring someone to handle that for you. For example, in your personal life, maybe you hire a housekeeper to come in and clean your home so you free up more time for you to focus on something else. Or maybe in a professional space, maybe you hire a contractor to come in and work on that, whatever that item is, as a project to free you up. Maybe you bring in an assistant to free you up a few hours a week so that you can focus on first things first, right? So by evaluating a task and putting it in one of these quadrants, you know how to handle what that task is. Now, if a task is not urgent and it's also not important, then forget about it. Just delete it. Delete it altogether. Don't even worry about it, right? Because it's not going to have an impact on the things that are most important. Okay. All right. So now I want to talk about boundaries. Right. So when I made the decision to leave my the home health agency where I was working all those hours, I had a bit of a I didn't have another job to go to. I just made I took a leap, y'all. I took a complete leap of faith, trusted God, jumped, stepped out onto the water, whatever you want to call it. I did all of that because I knew that I couldn't continue in the path that I was on. So I had about 3 months before I ended up finding a job. And I really started thinking about what type of environment I wanted to go into for this next job so that I could set myself up for success in a way that I was professionally successful, but also personally successful. Now, I'm going to be honest with you all. I did it all right. I made some mistakes along the way. I admittedly, I brought some of the same habits that I had at my previous job, I brought some of those into my new job. And while it wasn't as severe, I still didn't do well, I can't even say I didn't do a good job I didn't set boundaries, but the type of role that I had taken on was not as demanding. Let me get a sip of water. All right. So the role that I took, what it wasn't as demanding. So I didn't set boundaries because I honestly didn't really feel like I needed to. However, over time, I started feeling my work life starting to encroach more and more on my personal life. And as a result, I had to then be clear and set some boundaries between my work life and my personal life and really start to say, hey, you know what? This isn't working for me. And ended up having to have conversations with my director and with my team members, with my direct reports to say to them, hey, these are the expectations. So when I'm off, only contact me if it's an emergency, if it's something that nobody else in the office can. And if it is an emergency, understand that I'm off and I will respond to you when I become available. Don't expect me to be Johnny on the spot and respond right away because that's just not going to happen. And then after I set those boundaries, I had to be sure to uphold them because, of course, the next time I was off, I still had people reaching out to me. I just, and usually I was actually available whenever they would call or text, but I would wait. I would wait at least an hour before I respond, unless if I was genuinely busy and I didn't see it, then so be it. But if I was really not, I was in a place where I didn't respond right away intentionally so that I could teach them my new boundary, right? So that I could uphold that new boundary that I had set and retrain them to retrain their expectations, right? So it's important for you to actually go through the process of setting some boundaries. So what does that look like? Hold on, I think I went too far, right? So what are boundaries anyway? Boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits that we establish to protect ourselves, right? So I had to protect my time. I had to protect my my mental limits, right? I had to protect myself from my team members because it's our responsibility to do so. It is not the responsibility of your supervisors. It's not the responsibility of your team members. It's not the responsibility of your clients. It is no one's responsibility but yours to protect yourself. Now, you may have a good manager or leader, CEO of the organization that creates a culture that is very self-care or work-life balance driven, but that is not, as I have seen it, I've been working in the space for a while, it's rare. It's rare that you have that. And I'm on a mission to transform the workplace in the United States to be more work-life balance, wellness driven. Because when you are well, when you have that balance, when you feel fulfilled in your life, you are able to be more productive. You're able to actually accomplish so much more than when you are stressed out, burned out, overwhelmed, all the things, right? So there's those three different categories, right? Physical, emotional, and mental uh, boundaries. Physical boundaries, that's your personal space, right? Your private, that's your privacy and your physical needs. When it comes to emotional boundaries, that is separating your emotions from the emotions of everyone else, right? Because you're going to have those emotional vampires, those people who dump on you, especially for those of you who are actually in the nonprofit space who are uh, forward facing, helping in the helping professions, right? You're human services, so you're providing case management, you're providing counseling and support to the underserved and the most needy in our communities. And it's important for you to have some emotional boundaries. Otherwise, you can end up taking on the emotions of everyone else. And it's not even you. And you can become emotionally overwhelmed, right? And then there's the mental boundaries that is protecting your thoughts, your values, and your opinions. So that might look like not, staying staying away from particular conversations with people because you know that their opinions, their values are just different from yours. And so there's certain conversations that I just won't have, right? With certain people, there are certain people, matter of fact, with my family, with my parents, there's certain conversations I won't even enter into because our viewpoints are different, they're just different. And it's not to say that one is right and one is wrong in most cases. It's just an opinion. It's a viewpoint. It's a perspective. So it's important for you to create these boundaries to prevent you from falling into this place of burnout, which I was teetering on the edge before I left the home health agency. I was on the ledge. I'm not gonna lie. I was literally on the ledge of burnout. I spent, and I didn't share this, but I spent many days, a few times a week, at least 2 or 3 times a week. I was in the bathroom crying because I was so overwhelmed with all that I needed to get done. 2 to 3 times a week in the bathroom crying at work because I was so overwhelmed. When you have boundaries and you're doing things to take care of yourself, I mentioned this earlier, you're able to be more productive. It creates respect, right? When you create professional boundaries and you uphold those, people will respect you because they recognize that you have self-respect. So they can respect that. They're like, okay, because you know that saying, if you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. It's so true. We are the ones that have to hold the boundaries. And people won't respect you if you don't. They will take advantage of you. And it's not necessarily from a malicious place. It's not it's not always not everyone is out to just use and abuse you. They do it because you allow it. And it's just easier, right? When you are the go-to person and you always say yes, they will always come to you because it's easier for them to come to you because they know that you're going to say yes. It's like I said, it's not out of malicious intent. They're not necessarily trying to use and abuse you. They just know it's easier for them, right? This is good. Yes. So true. I've had to learn this. I made it easy for people to take advantage of me. But listen, I'm guilty. Me too. You know what? I actually found pride. I found pride in being the go-to person in the office. When people were like, I don't know, go ask Tracetta. I was like, yes. Like this place can't run without me. Right? So we have to learn how to create space for ourselves and teach others how we want them to treat us. So that might look like, I'm going to put this up this way. That might look like establishing some really hard work hours, some boundaries between when you work, when you're not going to work, some limitations on communication, like I was sharing with you earlier, the things that I put into place. I communicated to my team, my department, when I was going to be contacted and how long it would take me to respond. Having some etiquette around meetings, trying to keep meetings to 30 minutes or less if you can. And if it needs to go longer than that, also having a set agenda. Don't just go in there willy-nilly, right? Have some sort of task management system, create your personal space between, even if you're in a situation where you are in open space and you have cubicles, I want to say cubby holes, but cubicles, right? You can still create some personal space there by maybe having some noise canceling headphones. Protect your breaks. Don't always sit at your desk and eat. Step away from it. Go to the break room, go outside, go for a walk, go, get out from your desk, move your body, because you need that mental break from your work, even if it's for only 15 minutes. You would be surprised at how that can help to recalibrate your mental status so that you can show up better, right? Then the last thing that I did to, after I changed my environment, establish some priorities, myself as the priority, set those boundaries, then I started incorporating self-care. Now, what self-care looks like for you may look different. For me and you might look different. But what's really important for you to understand is that your level of self-care needs to either match or exceed your levels of stress. Otherwise, what can happen is you might say, well, Trisetta, I'm doing some self-care things, but it's not really making a difference. Well, are you doing enough? You may not be, your stress level may be much higher than the level of self-care that you are providing for yourself. So you need to make sure that your level of self-care matches or exceeds the level of stress that you are experiencing. Look at that. Great tips. I'm glad that this is good. I'm glad you're enjoying this. All right. So what are a few self-care strategies? You can practice mindfulness. Exercise. Right? Exercise can actually be a form of self-care, right? Because we got to take care, not only do we need to take care of our mental and emotional space, but we need to make sure that we take care of our physical body as well. Right? That's a form of self-care, because if you don't take care of this physical body and it gives out, you won't be here anymore and nobody will care. Nobody will care that you did about your boundaries or any of that. Right? You got to take it, because if you don't, you won't be here anymore. And that's just a fact. I shared last week or the week before last, I can't quite remember, but I shared the statistic that 120,000 people die every year due to work-related stress. Literally, stress kills. Literally. So it's important for you to move your body and nourish your body. Eat healthy foods, right? You want to eat foods that fuel your body. Fruits, vegetables, proteins. Drink your water. Every single cell in our body requires water to carry out its functions. And when you are dehydrated, your cells cannot perform at their optimal level. I shared another statistic earlier this week about how the average US citizen adult drinks 2.5 cups of water a day on average. 2.5 cups of water when we're supposed to be drinking 10 to 12. So the majority of the population is walking around here dehydrated, meaning your cells can't perform at their optimal level to keep you healthy. That is a form of self-care. Drinking your water, that's a form of self-care, right? Get support, whether that is friends, family members, a therapist, a mentor, counselor, pastor. I don't care how you get it, but having support is really necessary. We need each other. You can't do this thing all by yourself, right? So you got to seek support from those who are in your network, in your community. Be realistic about what you can accomplish. Be realistic about it. You can't do everything. Not all at the same time. That's where the priorities come into play. Maybe create some sort of self-care toolkit. And then, of course, make sure that you're taking your breaks. Breaks are essential to being able, hobbies. For me, I live in Florida, and so I am definitely a beach girly. And one of my forms of self-care is to spend time at the beach. I was so upset. Last week, I hosted my 3-day Balance Leader Boot Camp, and I had planned to, whenever I'm doing any type of launch like that, it takes a lot out of me. And so I always build in some self-care on the front end and back end of any type of event that I'm hosting. And I had planned to go and spend the day on Friday, not at the beach, but at the pool. I was going to go to the pool for the day. And I forgot to record the last session of the boot camp. And so, which it was the best one. It was totally fire. And I was so upset with myself. However, so I was like, okay, I need to record the content for those people because I promised them the recordings. And so I needed to record that. I was like, all right, well, after I'm done recording, then I'll go to the pool because I needed to fulfill that commitment, right? That was something that was important and urgent. So I needed to make sure that I took care of that. However, when I was checking my email that morning, I came to realize that there was a notice from the apartments saying that the pool was closed effective immediately until further notice. And I was like, really? No. So I was like, well, maybe I could get done early enough to drive over to the beach. But yeah, no, it was like 2 something in the afternoon before Zoom finished processing the video for me to be able to send it out. And so no such luck. But anyway, I will get to the beach though. Maybe I'll go. Well, anyway, I'll get there. I'll get there at some point. So anyway, I digress. But some sort of hobby, right? Doing hobbies can be a form of self-care as well. For me, besides the beach, spending time at the water, I love to dance. I take Latin dance classes. And so dancing is one of the things that I do to as a form of self-care. I get social aspect of it. I get the physical, like I get exercise, right? And then it's just fulfilling. It's just fun, like music and dancing. It's just fun. So it ticks several boxes on the self-care phase, right? So we talked about shifting your environment. We talked about the importance of prioritization. We talked about setting boundaries and creating, self-care, right? So these are the changes and shifts that I made in my own life to create more balance for me so that I can be more fulfilled and more productive in the process. So that I can be a better leader. Now, I want to share with you one of my client success stories because I'm not the only one. I teach these to my clients, the same strategies that I'm sharing with you today. And so I want to share with you one of my clients and kind of, the shifts that she made, similar to what I just shared with you, to change her life. So meet Catherine. When she first came to me almost a year ago now, she too was working long hours. She had a management role and had two vacant positions for her department. And so she was not only doing her role that she was new in, but she was also trying to manage the roles and responsibilities of the two vacant positions. Plus, she had a consulting business that she had 5 clients that she was working with. So she was getting less than 5 hours of sleep every night. Less than 5 hours of sleep every single night. She was stressed out. She was overwhelmed. And I was genuinely concerned. I was genuinely concerned for her well-being. And so what she did was, uh, established some priorities, just figured out what things she wanted to keep and what things she wanted to let go of. We worked together to create a self-care routine. She established some boundaries between her work life and her personal life, and even within her personal life. And she just started saying no to the things that weren't aligned with what we established as her priorities. And now, this is Catherine now. She's what she ended up doing was quitting her like me. She quit her job, but she had another job to go to, but she had the confidence to negotiate a 25,000, or excuse me, she had the confidence to negotiate a sign-on bonus that allowed her to take her family on vacation before starting her new role. She negotiated a salary that not only covered what she was making on her job, but also the income she was generating from her consulting clients. So she fired her consulting clients and then had more time available to be able to spend with her family, which was one of the key things. She has 3 girls and a spouse that she wasn't spending time with. And so this gave her the opportunity, by now only having to focus on one job, she was now able to be more present for her girls. And we established a routine that allowed her to have designated time to spend one-on-one, not only family time, but time to spend one-on-one with each of her girls and her husband. Now she's in this job that she absolutely loves and is so much more fulfilled. And when she posted this picture recently, I commented. She shared several pictures from this photo shoot, and I commented on it, how, you know, beautiful she looked, and how radiant she looked, and she commented back and was like, "You are responsible for a great deal of this. You have had a major role in me being able to show up in this way, and that is why I do what I do. It's for the impact." So now, like Catherine, I'm in this place where I have established these boundaries. I'm working, I shifted to creating a culture of self-care and as well as personal and professional development. That's something that I started when I was still working a 9 to 5 with my team members. I encouraged them to take time off. I encouraged them to go to lunch. I would take them out to lunch once a month to encourage them to get out of the office and just kind of have some time to let their hair down. I would be, things would be going on. I'm like, hey, just why don't you take the day off? You don't have to worry about putting in your leave time. Just take tomorrow off. I would do things like that because I recognize the importance of being able to have time to yourself to recharge and rejuvenate. Not only that, but I encouraged them to invest in. Not only did I encourage them to invest in their own personal and professional development, but I invested in it. During our weekly meetings, I would have conversations around them, what their goals were, and how I could support them in the fulfillment of those goals. And you know what happened? I ended up creating this culture within our department that enabled us to be successful in achieving the things that we set out to accomplish as an outreach team while also enjoying one another and the environment that we worked in, because we worked and played. We worked hard, but we also had a very lighthearted environment that really fostered this work-life balance culture so that they could show up and I could show up as the best version of ourselves. And then I practice self-care unapologetically. If I needed time off, if I started feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a little, eh, I would schedule some time off. I wouldn't necessarily be going anywhere. I would just take a day. I would take, like a mental health day. You know what? I'm not coming in tomorrow. I need a day. Right? I need a day. And so you can take these same principles, these same strategies that I use, these same strategies that Catherine used to transform your life so that you too can lead with balance and unlock the success that you truly desire within your career without sacrificing your well-being in the process. Okay. Uh, I'm curious, do you have any of your own success stories? Has there been a time in your life when you were doing really well about balancing your work life with your personal life? Maybe today, maybe you did in the past, but maybe today you're not doing so great. And that's okay. It's a process, it's a journey. There are going to be ebbs and flows to everything that we do. We won't always get it right. The key is to continually be assessing, continually be evaluating, and recognizing, hey, I'm imbalanced over here. What do I need to do to right this ship? What do I need to do to get back on the path that I want to be on? So now I want to open it up I've got about 7 minutes. So if you have any specific questions around productivity and life balance, feel free to drop them in the chat. I definitely want to address any questions that you may have. And yes, so this quote is actually, I can't take credit for it. It is actually a quote of a dear friend of mine. Her name is Ava Laura Gaither. I had her as a speaker in my Prioritize You summit that I did last year. And she shared that. And I told her, I was like, I'm stealing that. But I always give her credit. Whenever I share it, I always give her credit because it is so important for us to make sure that we are making sure that we're getting enough time for us to actually de-stress, right? De-stress. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I'm happy to address any questions that you may have. If you don't, if you have questions and you don't want to publicly share your question, I understand. I totally get that. Maybe you want to have a conversation with me. Feel free to book a complimentary 30-minute call. And you can go to chatwithtrisetta.com. You might have to put in the www. Sometimes it doesn't work if you don't put the www in front of it. I'm not sure why. I haven't figured it out. I haven't taken the time. It's not as important to me, but chatwithtrisetta.com and just find a time that works with your schedule. Just find what works with your schedule and we can have a conversation offline if you prefer not to share on here. So let's see. So you're working a 9 to 5 and just opened up a shop. Oh yes, that's super important. So when you're working, and I did this too. I did this too. where I was working a full-time job when I first started my business. And actually, when I first started, my first business was I had a furniture refinishing business, and it started out of a hobby. It was just a hobby of mine, and I enjoyed it so much I turned it into a business. And then after about 3 years in, I felt this call to share some of the things that I had come up with to help me to balance between getting my work done for my 9 to 5, as well as doing the things that I needed to do to build my business. What's going to be your friend is really focusing on your time management, that prioritization and time management. So really figuring out like what is most important from your personal life, your 9 to 5, and your business. What is most important from all three of those aspects, and rank them. Not only figure out what's most important, but rank them. What is most important, what's most important, and then what's next most important. Because there's going to come times when you have those three priorities when they're going to compete with one another. I promise you that. So when you establish what's most important, you rank them, then that helps you when you come against those situations where things are competing against one another. And you know that, okay, well, my family is going to take precedence over my business, or whatever you've established as your priorities, right? Okay, so what would a day look like in terms of waking, working out, working, family? Okay. I have a tool, a masterclass where I go really deep into how to create a time block schedule for these purposes. It's called Command Your Calendar. If you send me an email to hello@tresettaanel.com, or you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and send me a DM, and I can share with you the link to that to that course, how to access that. But in short, because it's a whole like hour and a half training, but in short, you want to begin your day maybe a little earlier than what you typically do. So instead of just getting up in the morning in time for you to get dressed and get ready to go to work, maybe you get up 30 minutes earlier, or you get up an hour earlier, so that you have some time to set the tone for your day, for you to to do some planning, to take a look at your day and say, okay, well, what do I need to accomplish today? What's most important? How do I go ahead and how do I get these things onto my schedule, right? Make sure that you're putting them on your schedule, the things that are most important. I definitely encourage you to have some sort of waking morning routine, right? Some sort of routine that when you wake up, this is what you do to set the tone for your day. And then, you go about your day, get your work done. And then in the evenings, you have designated time again to work on your business, to do the things that you need to do in your business. You should have kind of a running to-do list, if you will. Let's see. Prioritization and time management. What's most important in work, personal, and business? Right. So you have to determine what's most important to you. Or are you saying that this is your kind of hierarchy, if you will, work, personal, and then your business? I'm not really sure. But yeah, so those two things are going to be key for you. And I would also recommend that you start planning your week in advance. Set a date with yourself each week to go through the process of planning out your schedule for the week. Personally, I like to do Sunday nights. Some people like to do first thing Monday morning. Some people do Fridays. like to do Friday evening or Friday afternoon before they close out their day to plan the week in advance. It's really up to you. When you do it doesn't really matter so much as that you do it consistently and the same day and around the same day and time that you do it, that you do that on a consistent basis, right? And what you want to do is go through the process of what are my priority obligations for the week? Like, what are the things that I need to that are on my schedule that can't be moved? So that might look like meetings or doctor's appointments or certain deadlines, right? There's things that you have that they just are what they are. Like you can't do anything about that, right? Those are your priority obligations. What are my priority projects, my priority tasks? What are the things that are most important for me to accomplish this week? Write them out. Maybe you have a running to-do list that you need to go through. However you want to do that, but figure out what's most important for me to get done this week. What do I need to accomplish that's going to move the needle towards the goals that I have? Then you want to ask yourself, what time do I have available to devote to these things? And you put the things that you set are your priority tasks or your priority projects, you put those on your schedule first. Then you fill in the gaps with all the other things that you need to accomplish. So we're not completely ignoring the things that you didn't establish as priorities. You're just simply making the things that are first things first, right? You're putting those major things on your schedule first, and then you fill in the gaps with the things that with everything else that falls in line. That way you ensure that you're getting your most important work done first. Don't be afraid to schedule times to meal prep, or don't be afraid to schedule family time. Don't be afraid to schedule self-care time. In fact, I encourage you to schedule weekly self-care time. Right? That's important. I love it. You should have been taking notes. I'm glad that you were. I'm glad that you were taking notes. That's awesome. I'm glad that you were doing that. So yeah. Whew, that was a lot. I'm going to take a do you have any other questions before I get ready to hop off? That was a lot of talking. This was good. I'm glad that I made the shift. I really felt led to make that shift into talking, kind of more, even though I still used the majority of the slides, not all of them, but I still used the majority of the slides and shared with you what I wanted to share with you. It's just I just did it in a different format than what I planned. I made a commitment a couple weeks ago to show up more as me, right? The real me, the authentic me. And the only way that I can do that is to share bits and pieces of my story and how I have transformed my own life with the things that I teach you all. This is not just, this isn't just book knowledge that I'm sharing. I didn't just go on the internet and do research and get okay, these are the strategies that you should know. These are things that I actually utilize in my life on a regular basis in order for me to accomplish the things that I desire to accomplish. And again, just like you, I don't always get it right. I struggle with procrastination. I struggle with distractions. I struggle with, a lack of clarity sometimes. I struggle with even, like fear of failure, fear of success, imposter syndrome. I struggle with all those things just like everyone else. I just simply tried my best to lean more into doing the things that I know work. Because usually when I'm not getting things done and I'm feeling like I'm not as clear on what needs to get done, or I start leaning into procrastination or trying to do multitask, doing too many things at one time, it's because I'm not following the strategies that I know work, right? And so it's then okay, it's that assessment, right? Continually assessing where you are, continually assessing what you're doing to see what is working, what isn't working, and what adjustments do I need to make so that things do work, and then actually following through and doing the things, making those adjustments that are necessary. So awesome. I love it. I'm so glad that this was helpful for you. Well, on that note, I'm going to close things out. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And like I always like to say, take care of yourself and each other. Bye for now.